Konnichiwa. It's Ravage HD here. Today I'm bringing you a talent and glyph tutorial. Quite a few people have requested it, so let's jump into this thing. Before I get started, I just want to say that I'm going to assume that you know what each individual talent does before I start, just because I don't want to read out, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and half of you know what it is already, and half of you don't. So just make sure you know what each one does, and then the guide will make more sense to you. So for the first tier of talents, you're most likely going to be choosing Nature's Guardian every time. The other two, they're really poor in comparison, to be completely honest. Stone Bulwark Totem, 23k absorb. It overlaps with your Earth Totems. It's another global, and it's 23k. I mean, when Ferocious Bite hits, 130k. There's not really any point in using this. Astral Shift, the only good thing about this is you can use it while you're silenced. So, I mean, if you're getting jumped by like a Boomkin rogue team or something, I guess this could help out. But even then, Nature's Guardian is literally a massive 30% heal, which is really noticeable. I'll probably have some on the screen and I want to show you what I mean by that. For the second tier of talents, Windwalk Totem's another one where you're probably not going to be changing it like at all, really. Frozen Power's bad. It shares cooldown with your Flame Shock, which you're basically spamming in threes to spread it everywhere. In duels as well, you're spamming it, so you can't really use that. You won't be able to root like when you want to root, so it's pointless. Earth Grab Totem, I've used it a few times, mainly against rogues or a warrior in a duel, just to test it out, messing around with things. But the superior choice here is 100% Windwalk Totem. I mean, it's borderline broken, don't tell Helinka, but especially in threes when you can like freedom your entire team twice with Call of the Elements, especially for like Thunder. If you want your warrior to stick on a target when you're going for a kill, it's really good for that. It's also really sick in duels versus basically every class, so Windwalk Totem's a choice here. I'd go for that. So for the third tier of talents, Totemic Protection is the way to go, personally, I think, just because landing a triple capstone is, one, game changing, and two, badass. Call of the Elements is really good, to be honest, if you're fighting an RMD or a God Comp. However, most of the time, even versus them, I choose this, although a lot of other LE Shamans I know they would choose Call of the Elements. This is really good versus like comps like Turbo and other melee cleaves. You can get like double capstone on the DPS, which really reduces the pressure and forces things, unless they're a DK, in which case it doesn't affect them, but that's another video. So for the fourth and most useful tier, you're going to want to take either Elemental Mastery or Echo of the Elements. Now, personally, most of the time I'm Elemental Mastery. Basically everything outside of Arena, I'll take Elemental Mastery, but for 3v3, Echo of the Elements. For 2v2, if you're playing with a healer, which I don't suggest because it's quite boring, but you would also take Echo of the Elements. But if you're playing double DPS in twos, Elemental Mastery can be good, but personal preference really on that one. For duels, Elemental Mastery is superior, except for like if you're against a mage or if you're against another shaman, or if you're against a shadow priest, because they'll just dispel it right off you, so it's kind of pointless. So for the healing tier of talents, more like this one's highlighted, so you should choose that one. Conductivity as a talent is one of those things where it's like Holinka put it there, and his intention was to change it at a later date. He just wanted to fill the gap for now, and then just never did. So that one can be completely ignored for PvP. I'm pretty sure in PvE you wouldn't use that either. For Ancestral Guidance, it heals you for a little bit if you use it with Elemental Mastery, Ascendant, Heroism. I mean, you could take it if you are planning on doing some 2v1s, 3v1s, and it might heal you for a little bit. But for duels, for 3v3, for 2v2, Rushing Streams is definitely the choice to go. I mean, I don't remember the last time I changed this to anything else. So this is one of those things where it's just static, same as Nature's Guardian. You're just probably never going to change it. So for the sixth tier of talents, it's one of those things where, once again, it's pretty static. I don't really change it. I mean, it gives you 10% damage on your Lava Burst, 30% on your Lightning Bolt. So if you use this with 4 Flame Shocks up in a 3v3 game, and you're spamming your procs out, it's really, really worth for the 10% damage. But the primal elementalist, I mean, the earth elemental will reduce damage to you, but once again, the totems are still, they're really weak, so anyone with a brain is just going to kill the totem straight away, and then it doesn't really do anything. Elemental Blast, I mean, we all remember the days of Mop, where that shit would cut 50% of your HP off. But now, I mean, what does this say? Dealing 14,000 damage, and your lightning bolt does 13,000? Really? On a 12-second cooldown? Yeah, it's just not worth, to be honest. I mean, you get the movement speed from the enhanced Unleash Fury, that's really nice. So if you unleash Windwalk, you'll get away from any melee. So yeah, for me, Unleash Fury 100% of the time. So for the final, and another shit tier, you've got Elemental Fusion, Storm Elemental Totem, and Liquid Magma. They all sound really nice, but they're not. This one here is misleading as fuck. Your Lava Burst and Lava Lash increase the damage of your next shock by 40%, stacking up to 2 times. So the first time you look at this, you're like, alright, so this increases the damage of my Fulmination by 80%. No, increases the damage of your Earth Shock by 80%. So, you know, your Earth Shock does 7,000 damage, so 80% onto that. That's what Elemental Fusion helps with. The good thing about Elemental Fusion is when you have the stacks and you cast Flame Shock, your Flame Shock does 80% more damage, which that is actually quite good. However, in threes, at least for me, it's pretty difficult to keep track of that and everything else in a threes game. For duels, I mean, you can keep track of it, so for duels it's really nice. Storm Elemental Totem, once again, it's Totem, so 5 HP, well not 5 HP, how much? 26,000 HP. Rubbish. Get one hit by like a melee attack. Liquid Magma, this is really fun, to be honest. Liquid Magma, I mean, if you're messing about, Liquid Magma is really good. In duels, I've used Liquid Magma a few times. However, I still use Elemental Fusion for the Flame Shock damage. But I mean, if you're in a say you're doing, like I used to do double elemental a lot, and we both would go Liquid Magma versus a Rogue Mage comp, and then put it down, it would like melt them both in the opener, which is pretty funny. So Liquid Magma is one of those things that looks badass, and it hits a decent amount. I mean, use Liquid Magma when you're bored of shitty Elemental Fusion. So the Glyph of Capacitor Totem reduces the charging time of your Capacitor Totem by 2 seconds. This gives you more control over the Capacitor Totem, and some players in duels will not notice the Capacitor Totem when it's on a 3-second charge. Don't ask me why. Slow brains, I assume. Glyph of Cleansing Waters, I use this in 2v2 mostly. I've not used it that much in 3v3. However, it's really efficient versus Warlock teams, especially when you're playing double DPS versus something like Warlock, Resto, Shaman. You can use this to dispel the agony off yourself, which 1 reduces damage and 2 gives you a 4% heal. I think the most I've ever gotten out of this is I did a healing surge and then I did the dispel, and it healed me for like 75k. I think that was with loads of multi strikes, but get the idea. Especially if there's 2 elementals, you're playing double elemental. 140k heal on someone is not bad from 2 healing surges. So Glyph of Flame Shock. This glyph is really good versus rotting comps, for example a Unholy DK comp or a Affliction Warlock comp like LSD, LSD2, LSD3, anything of that sort. It can help your healer with the pressure. I've used it against mirror LSDs before. Glyph of Ghost Wolf, I've used this mainly in 2v2 when I'm playing double elemental, because if there's a rogue on you and you've got this, it's a lot easier to kite around pillars and things like that. Because otherwise Ghost Wolf really doesn't do much if you're affected by crippling poison. Glyph of Grounding Totem, the only time I've ever used this seriously, where I'm not like messing around trying to reflect DKs into myself and knock them away, is when I dueled a really sick boomkin, and he was cloning me at really annoying times. He was really good at faking, and I had to come up with something, and I decided to do this, and it did end up making me win more than I lost eventually. This Glyph of Healing Stream here is really good versus teams that are like Boomkin Mage or Mage Ellie, because you get double value out of the damage reduction. Otherwise it's not as good. There are better things to take usually, but just experiment and see what's what's working for your comp. This Glyph of Hex is really good versus teams that cannot dispel it. For example, Ret Hunter Disc. It can force some major cooldowns, especially when it's on a 20-second cooldown. Glyph of Purge is really good versus, well, anything really, but mainly Wrestler Druids. For one, for making it a little bit easy to purge NS, because you got more chance of getting it if they have maybe 2 or 3 buffs. And 2, because if someone has a full set of hots and you press Purge on them, you get 2 hots for 1 global, which is, as I like to say, double value. These glyphs here, you can't use them at the same time, however they both do have their individual uses in certain situations. So this Shamanistic Rage glyph here, the one that removes all the spellable harmful magic effects from you, is very good versus Holy Paladin teams where they may hodge you. For example, a Windwalker DK Holy Paladin team, I've seen them hodge me before when they switch to my healer, but if I have this glyph I can get out of it without trinketing or attempting to ground it, which isn't as reliable as just using this. This glyph here is really good when you're not running the 4 set, so if you're playing LSD, if you're like me, you won't run the 4 set because you know you're not going to get trained. Your Warlock is, so there's, I don't know, I think there's less of a reason to have the Aura Mastery when you're playing LSD, so I take the extra stats instead. But this is really good if you want to get a Hex off without having any chance of getting CS or something like that. So sometimes I take that. I use this glyph a lot more in duels than I do in arena, but I do use it in arena in 2v2 when we face another double DPS most of the time, especially if it's like Rogue Mage or Feral Hunter or Feral X, anything with a Feral. This is really good against something like that. Last but not least, the Glyph of Thunder is really good versus Windwalker DK healer teams because, as you know, Fisted Fury wrecks healers, wrecks anyone really. And if you have your Thunderstorm on a 35-second cooldown, you can pretty much get every fist. For your little minimum glyphs, Glyph of the Compy is pretty funny, to be honest. Turn people into a little like weird like dinosaur compy type thing. Totemic Encirclement can confuse people with slow brains. So if you put down Searing Totem like so, you get 4 totems. I mean, they get the health bar on top of here, but I've seen hunters, obviously hunters, huntards, who else is going to do it, but I've seen them target each one and kill them like there's something important. So I mean, you know, might as well. It's free, you don't lose anything from taking it. Glyph of Ascendance, I really like this glyph. Makes your Ascendants look more badass, I think. It kind of look like a weird long human-ish form thing that kind of ran around. So, but this is a lot better. It just turns you into like a god. This is like god form. Don't fuck with me, bitch. It's a lot better, I think. It's quite expensive, the glyph, for some reason, but I would recommend getting it. It's